Hey, good afternoon, everybody. Happy Sunday. Welcome to the Brit Happens channel. If you're here on YouTube, thank you ever so much. If you are watching from X, because we now are streaming on X. Let's see who is in the chat. We have Patricia. So good to see you today, love. Debbie. Hey, darling. We have Warden Taryn. So good to see you. Nikki, my love, thank you for being here. So good to see everybody. Oh, Olive is here as well. Oh, thank you so much. Do you like that? I made that. Let me tell you about it. So Nikki sees the day here. She sent me the clip without saying anything. At the time, it wasn't edited to have the music or the uh, Lally, Brennan, and Alessi label. Same thing. So she and I, at the same time, posted extremely similar videos at extremely similar times with similar labels. So if you don't follow Nikki on TikTok, please be sure you do. All right, guys. So the reason. All right. Awesome. Everybody can hear and see me. I just can't see myself is all. So, guys, the reason we are here today is to welcome an extremely special guest. You may know him from some of his amazing work in New Hampshire as an attorney. You may know him from his work in Massachusetts as an attorney. He may have helped you in court. You may know him from his show on YouTube about the law with Laney Law. You may know him because he whooped your ass in court. But guys, please, please, please help me welcome.
You're freezing. If you're talking to me, you're freezing. I'm sorry. Can you hear me? You're freezing.
Okay, Andrew, can you guys hear me?
I
Hey,
can
look.
hear you. Yeah.
Okay, awesome. I think maybe my camera was pulling too much power or something, and it was giving me some issues. So, Andrew,
Yes.
first of all, thanks so much for your patience. I'm sorry about that. Um,
Oh,
now
we have technical problems all the time. I can't see you. I hear you, but I can't see you.
Yeah, I don't have the camera on right this second. I'll try turning it on in just a minute, but I just wanna
Okay.
go and I wanted to at least be present. So, if you're wanting to see anybody in the chat, at the top right-hand corner of your screen, there should be a tab that says comments.
Oh, I see them. I see them. You got Patricia.
Okay,
You got not Haley Walbrand. I've been following them. Yeah, you got Denise, and the last one I see is Seize the Day.
awesome. So, not Haley is actually very much not a Haley. He is actually a Jason.
Okay.
He is starting up his own media channel.
Okay.
Andrew, if you can remind me the name of your channel, I'd love to at least just go ahead and post it.
Well,
But
it comes under the name of Law Offices of Andrew D. Myers. We've titled it about the law, but it's under the name of Law Offices of Andrew D. Myers.
okay, so guys, if you haven't already, please, 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 give him a sub on YouTube. Law Offices of Andrew D. Myers. And he and his is Lainey your paralegal, or can you tell me a little bit about who she is?
Oh, I should let her speak for herself, but she's not here to do so. She is a really bright person. And long story short, I could never have started a YouTube podcast without help. And I reached out to different people. One of them was a radio guy, Doug Cope, who sadly has passed away. And he really helped me a lot trying to figure out how to do all this stuff. But then I needed somebody that really knows the internet and really, I mean, as we both know, things go wrong all the time.
Yes.
And I was looking for somebody, put out ads, and she's an engineering student, and she applied, and she just is fantastic. She really helps me a lot. There's a lot of intricacies to this stuff that people think you just get a camera and a microphone and turn it on. As you know
Yeah.
quite well, it doesn't work that way. And the other thing is you can sit in your house, as I think we both are now. I'm in Studio B and talk, but unless you do stuff behind the scenes, you're not going to get any viewers. So that's who she is.
Absolutely. I definitely need a Laney law of my
Yeah.
own. It's starting to seem, I mean, you can do everything right, and then when, test it all, and then when it comes to actually popping on and making it happen, there it goes. It just all goes awry.
We have
Okay,
had so many technical problems. So many. It used to take us like 2 hours to get set up. It used to take us 2 hours. Now we're down to
yeah,
about a half hour. It's awful, and you never
unbelievable.
know. I had everything all, we had wires and, boxes and stuff all over the place. And I finally figured to confine it down to a box. Like, how guitar players have their rig in a little box. So I did that with all the equipment, and it's going bzzz. And, she says, the AC's crossing over. And so we had to take apart everything I'd done. So yeah, she's a troubleshooter.
Bless it. Well, I'm so glad you have her. Your channel is absolutely fantastic. I've been watching you and following
Thank
you
you. Oh,
for
thank
several
you.
months.
Thank you.
I actually found you on TikTok, and then TikTok led me to YouTube here to find you. So Andrew, tell me a little bit about your career and your history as an attorney in New Hampshire and in Massachusetts.
Oh, good grief. I don't know how far back you want me to go, but I was a radio and TV reporter before I went to law school. I got out of Emerson College in Boston, and I worked in radio and TV for 10 years. And then I decided, go to law school. This is crazy. And almost all of my friends that I've kept in touch with who are in the media or had been in the media for a long time said, you were so smart to get out of this business. So I go to law school in Boston, Suffolk University in Boston, and got out and worked for a law firm in Boston, tried a ton of cases, went out on my own. I really I really didn't like the law firm scene. So I went out on my own. I had an office in North Andover, which is just north of Boston, for 27 years.
Whoa.
And so I was a trial attorney. I do trial work and I do bankruptcy work. So I'm largely on the civil side, but I've done a fair amount of criminal work. I am mostly a civil attorney, but I'll take on criminal cases, and they tell you, you should associate yourself with other counsel when you take on things like that. So I've associated myself with different counsel over the years. One of the guys that I relied on to help me with my clients was a guy who you might know his name, Hank Brennan. And bright guy, sharp guy. Don't take this as an endorsement of the way things are being handled by the Commonwealth, but he's a bright guy, sharp guy. Anybody that says, oh, he's stupid to do that, nuh-uh. People misinterpreted a comment that he made about, well, I haven't reviewed it yet. He
about watching the first trial.
I'm telling you, he reviewed it. He's got a mind like a steel trap. But anyhow, so that's me. I've been practicing law for all these years, but I had been doing blog articles for years. And I had a great SEO guy, really bright guy, and he showed me how to optimize it and how to work on the SEO and all that. But after about 10 years of blogging, the more SEO tricks we used, the less people were reading, because sadly in America, people don't read anymore. People do not read anymore. I mean, look at all the bookstores that have gone out of business. So I decided to do YouTube. I decided to start podcasting, and for 6 months, Laney Law and I did civil cases, and on a good day, we get 500 views.
Well, and it's great to see that you have somewhat rolled with the times so much, because you're absolutely right. Over the years, people's attention spans have diminished so much, and you noticed that and adapted. And I mean, with all your experience, every time I pull up your channel, I think to myself, come with me and you'll be in a world of legal education. I learned so much watching you, and I'm sure I'm not the only one who benefits from it.
Oh, wow. You're learning from me? We're just celebrating the fact that earlier this month, we reached 10,000 subscribers, which for us is like, yes, get the champagne. But I know there's people out here that have 100,000 subscribers. There's a guy that has 1 million subscribers doing legal stuff. So I know we're little, but for us, that's a big thing.
Indeed. It's a big milestone to hit 10K. That's fantastic. And how long have you had your channel now?
Well, we started in March of 2023, but like I said, we did civil stuff for like the first 6 months, and we switched over to true crime. And I've been a true crime follower since the days of Charles Manson. That's how old I am. And then Son of Sam, and then Ted Bundy. And, so I followed it all. I have a huge, true crime book collection. So when people told me you're wasting your time doing civil stuff, we switched over in late summer, early fall of 2023 to true crime. And that's when people started watching our channel, because people just didn't care about that other stuff.
Excellent move on your part. True crime, I can see being far more marketable content. So Jim says he absolutely loves your show.
Well, thank you.
Peoples, Yoli, Read the Intern, and Laney. Wonderful. We got a question from Jason, not Haley, and I wanted to make sure that I pulled it up here. Oh, okay. Jason says, hi, Andrew. Tell us a little bit about how you started following this case and what your initial impressions were. So can you delve into that a little bit, Andrew?
Well, yeah, two things. One, it's local. It's local to us here in Massachusetts. It's a big local story. I mean, it's been in the news a lot. And then the fellow I mentioned before, his name is Doug Cope. He was a radio guy and a lot of different radio stations, but he worked at the big Boston radio station WBZ for years. And so he was helping us with the thing all along. And we're always looking for things to do. And he said, Andy, have you been following this Karen Read case? like, what? So I started reading a lot about it, and just, it's in the news. So that's how I started following it. And then the more you read, the more you scratch your head and say, something is not right here. Something is
Indeed.
just really messed up here. And, I mean, it's just, so that's how I started. And then we can't let it go, because it's just, how could you not? I mean, I watched the entire trial. I watched the whole trial. I'm still practicing law, and like some of the YouTubers, I'm out there actively um, practicing. So if I
Sure.
couldn't watch an entire hearing during the day, I'd go home that night and watch it on YouTube. So I watched the whole trial, and it's just, oh my God. I mean,
So many hours.
anybody that watched that trial and didn't think something was fishy just isn't connecting their brain cells together.
Absolutely. Aside from the voicemails, so when I first, because I'm from Florida, I'm
Right.
nothing local, but when I first began hearing about it, every time I stumbled across something on the internet, it appeared that there was a piece of evidence that was there that was admitted into court, or was going to be admitted into court, that turned out not to be an organic and legally collected piece of evidence. And so when I started kind of poking my nose in this case, I was looking for just one thing that would have organically suggested that Karen Reed backed her Lexus LX 570 at 24 miles an hour in the snow on a curved road to hit that body. And every piece of evidence, somehow there was something incredibly questionable about it.
Mhm.
Something going on with the chain of custody, where
Mhm.
those bits of evidence planted. And I mean, aside from her voicemails to him that
Yeah.
night, it just, the
Yeah.
more I looked, the more I saw they have absolutely nothing. So even if you believe that she did this, in my humble opinion, and I'm not a lawyer, that's why I have you here. But in my humble opinion, she deserves to walk in the eyes of the the law. She should walk, even if she did do it.
Well, I mean, you talk about those voicemails that she had. I mean, they had one of those relationships that was up and down, and who hasn't been in a relationship where you had arguments? And she
Absolutely.
was she was mad at the guy, but there's no connection between her being mad at him and leaving those awful voicemails and the crime. How does that prove any element of any of the three charges against uh, against Karen Reed? I mean, there are three charges. Each charge has various elements, and motivation, by the way, is not something that is required to be proven. So again, I mean, if you've had arguments with your
Right.
boyfriend or girlfriend, that doesn't mean that you emmed them. I mean, we have to be politically
Right.
correct with YouTube. And just the thing that stood out the most to me, I mean, there's just, I hate to say something stood out the most to me, because then I always get comments, well, what about this? What about that? The thing that really stood out to me is just the unprofessional way in which the Massachusetts State Police, and yes, I drive my car on the Massachusetts highways, so I better be careful, but just the unprofessional way in which the entire investigation was handled. I mean, even a kid who watches one episode of CSI knows that if there's a crime, especially if a police officer is found on somebody's front yard, you don't just stumble around with Stop and Shop grocery bags and
Oh, no.
party cups and a leaf blower. A
No
leaf
kidding.
blower. I mean, um, I lived
Well,
in.
see,
Go ahead.
oh,
Go
I
ahead.
was just gonna just to interject. It's they've made a joke of themselves,
They've
and
made a. And what about all the stuff that Proctor said, which I'm not going to repeat on your
oh,
channel? But what about all the stuff he said about Karen Reed? I mean,
no kidding.
and that
On the first day, too. I mean,
his supervisor Yuri Buchanan was in on those, and they didn't discipline the guy. And I mean, and it goes, the fish rots from the head down, and that the governor of Massachusetts, a liberal, a progressive, who was elected in a liberal progressive state, she just pretty much said, meh. She said, well, it's a pending case, and so I can't comment, and then hope that it
sure.
would go away. And in true America has 30 seconds of memory, it kind of, how can the state of Massachusetts have a governor that just kind of goes meh and allows all that stuff to just, they discipline these guys with like taking away 3 vacation days or 5 vacation days, and for these guys, they have hundreds of vacation days. So that's like you dropping a nickel on the floor and saying, let it get.
Exactly.
It's
Exactly.
just
It
the fish
it's
rots
like
from the.
yeah, it's like a 5-minute timeout or, I
Yeah,
wouldn't even consider that a slap on the wrist of, a
no.
couple sick days, really?
So the,
Ugh,
the investigation itself was just awful. It was rotten to the core. I lived in what they used to call the fashionable South End of Boston when I was in law school. I got the heck out of there and moved. But one night I heard a shot. I looked out the window and a Boston police officer had been shot not far from where I was living at the time. And I counted within less than 5 minutes, there were 26 police cruisers on scene. And I lost count at 26 because a police officer had been shot.
yes.
Every cop car in the whole city of Boston and Cambridge and God knows where else was on scene. That's how you handle a case like that. And so what? There was a blizzard. We get, you're lucky you live in Florida. I don't. And we get blizzards. It happens. We call them nor'easters because they come up the coast and they
Right.
slam us. And so what? A police officer was found in death throes on the front yard, and they
Oh
didn't
my word.
they didn't call in the professionals to investigate this. They just had a
No
couple of
kidding.
people wandering around with leaf blowers, really, and that doesn't blow away the evidence, really.
True. That when Gallagher was on the stand, he was making it sound like this was the first time they've ever investigated a murder in the winter before.
Exactly.
And that
Yeah.
would be like if someone in Florida said, "Oh, well, we didn't properly seal the crime scene or check the evidence because it was hot outside." Well, I'm sorry, but no shit, Sherlock. Of course, you're in Massachusetts or you're in Florida. You're gonna have some inclement weather here and there, but
Yeah.
your
Yeah.
job still has to be done. And he's been there for 30 years.
You
Oh my
cordoned off
goodness.
the scene. I mean, I've seen crime scenes. I've seen crime scenes. I used to be a reporter, and I've gone to crime scenes, and they lock it down. They wouldn't even let us get close, and we would kind of work. If you had a good source, you could get close. But the first thing you do is you lock it down with that tape, and then you put police officers around the perimeter. Nobody gets in until the professionals come to the crime scene and look over it. And that just didn't happen here. They just kind of blundered into it. Oh, it's snowing. The neighbor has some Stop and Shop bags and a leaf blower. Okay, we'll just shoot. No, that's not how you do it. And so at first I thought it was a crazy conspiracy that all these people, conspired together. But, after you watch the trial and then after you think about it, it just makes sense. It just makes sense that she dropped him off. He went into the house. The data on the iPhone shows that he went up and down stairs. Something
Mhm.
happened inside that house, and people have told me stuff that I can't corroborate because, as the old journalist in me says, I don't have corroboration or a second source.
Sure.
But something happened to him in that house, and they threw him out in the snow. And they said, well, she had been drinking. Let's pin it on her. She doesn't remember. So I don't, I don't buy any of the prosecution, and they failed to get their conviction. Now they're like really honing in and trying to knock out all the experts and probably bring in a whole new way of trying the case. And it's troublesome the way the whole case has been handling.
So, speaking of handling experts, how common is it, would you say, just in your experience and your expertise, how often do you see an expert of Dr. Marie Russell's caliber being raked over the coals like this? This is her second hearing just to determine whether she's qualified when she's obviously one of the top medical professionals in the country. She was, quite frankly, the tone in which Attorney Brennan was questioning her the other day. I understand that he's free to do it that way, but it was as though he was treating her as a hostile witness. How often do you see something like that when that witness is nothing but an expert? She wasn't there. She wasn't at the scene. She didn't see what happened. Had nothing to do with the story itself.
Well, experts are always an issue. Yes, I've used experts in cases, and yes, you have to subject them to Daubier, and yes, you have to make sure that they have education training, and experience. And those are the three hallmarks that one must prove. I mean, it's more complicated than that if you go into the details of Daubert, if you go into the details of the Massachusetts Lanigan decision. But that's the basic thing. And Dr. Marie Russell, without question, is highly qualified. I mean, she started out as a police officer in Malden, Massachusetts, which is north of Boston. And Canton, of course, is south of Boston. Then she went out west and she went to medical school. She worked in the emergency room for years. She saw over 500 dog bites, over 1,000 car accidents. So who better? But that she introduced reasonable doubt. She introduced more than reasonable doubt.
Absolutely.
In my mind, she and the ARCA experts and some other things made the case. And so, the new special prosecutor comes in and says, we can't have that. We can't have reasonable doubt. We got to knock her out. And not that another attorney might do that, but I think and I'm going to say this right now, and I'm only going to say it once. I'm a member of the Massachusetts Bar. I have cases pending in the superior courts in Massachusetts. So I will not disparage a sitting judge. I just won't do it.
Sure.
And
you
I
can
won't
make an
call
argument
names.
in front of her one day. You never know. So.
But that would be troublesome. But anyhow, you don't allow an expert because she gave a hearing once, and you don't reverse yourself on something like that. That's going to be extremely suspicious, and people are going to shake their heads, or people are going to reject the whole way this case has been handled, top to bottom, even more if that happens. So I can't see that. I can't.
Yeah, I don't see her coming back from the damage that would do to her reputation if she were to not allow Dr. Russell after all.
Yeah, I can't see it, but you never know. You just never know. You just really don't know. I mean, I thought the court was wrong in ordering the notes of the reporters from WFXT Channel 25 and from the Boston Magazine. I thought that was wrong. I'll come right out and say it. So I thought, and even though Massachusetts doesn't have a shield law, which it should, Massachusetts should hang its head in shame, and the media in Boston should hang its head in shame for not hiring an attorney and hiring a lobbyist to make sure they have a shield law. But even so, there's a balancing test that I've gone over on my channel that could have been used to prevent all that. So I thought that was wrong too.
Absolutely. I'm with you. I believe that there should not be any kind of infringement on the First Amendment. That is kind of the root of what makes our country our country. And yeah, there absolutely should be legislation protecting journalists. Massachusetts is one of the only states in the country that does not have anything shielding them. But yeah, I would love to know more, maybe the next time we talk about how they could have maybe handled that better and protected themselves from having to turn that over. So Kersey Nursey, hey love, she asks Attorney Myers, why do you think Hank took on this case? Do you have any? And obviously this would be speculation, but do you have any ideas there?
Well, I can only see that courthouse in the background over my shoulder there. That is the Lawrence, Massachusetts District Court. Now we're looking at the Essex County District Court in Lawrence, Massachusetts. And he started out as a prosecutor in that county. He was a prosecutor originally before he then, and that's pretty common for people to go from being prosecutors to going over to the defense side. I've known a lot of people that have done that. And so he started as a prosecutor, then he went into defense. He's a well-known, very competent defense attorney in Boston. So why he decided to go back to this case, I can't answer that. You're right. It would be speculation.
I am not a resident of New England, but I am somewhat aware of the cost of living and things up there. It sounds to me like $75,000 on a case like this would be chump change.
It is, yeah. I think they told him $250 an hour, and the ceiling is $75,000. And yeah, that is low. I mean, $250 an hour for a Boston attorney. I mean, the divorce attorneys are getting $800 to $1,000 an hour in Boston.
Wow.
And that's a matter of public record. I mean, that Boston Magazine actually a long time ago did an article about a famous Boston defense attorney who at the time was billing $850 an hour. So that's pretty low, actually. It's pretty low. And I know, criminal defense attorneys, they command a lot of attention because they do work in a lot of detail, and it's not that the $250 an hour goes into the attorney's pocket. You have an office, you have a vehicle, you have electronics like you and I have right now, you have paralegals, secretaries, all the rest. And so I don't know, I can't answer the question why he would have taken it. Who is
Indeed.
I see your commenter there has protect Dr. Meemaw Russell.
I mean, isn't she just the most endearing character? I mean, watching her, I would 100% sit and take a knitting class with her or bake Christmas cookies with her. Oh, speaking of Christmas, Attorney Myers, check these out.
What? Oh, you got me cookies? Thank you. What do you have, a penguin?
They are rubber ducks.
Oh, cool.
That are Christmas themed. So this
I haven't seen them.
Penguin.
Where in God's name did you get those?
I found these at Target.
No
Believe
way.
it or not. This one's an elf.
And
then we have a duck wearing a wreath around his neck.
Well, I'm in my
a Yeti.
Oh wow, look at those. I'm in my home I'm in my home studio. We call it Studio B. In my office, we have the rubber ducks. We have rubber ducks in my office, but I haven't seen those. I haven't seen the Christmas ducks.
I'll send some to you. Send me the address for your office, and I'll mail them up there. I saw the YouTube short that you did about the rubber ducks with the the joke
with Courtney.
The shut the duck up, and that was such a crazy case as well. I'm so relieved for Rich Schiffer now that all of the felony witness intimidation charges have been thrown out. I mean, thank goodness. I actually did print, speaking of Rich, I printed the law that the Commonwealth was using to prosecute him. And the wording of it just seems very broad to me, and I would love your take on it.
Well, I haven't read that. You have it in front of me, and I've glanced at it, but I haven't analyzed it. So tell me what I'm supposed to.
So I'll just read it to you, and
and,
just tell me what you think. It says, whoever willingly, either directly or indirectly, threatens, okay, that's reasonable, attempts or causes physical, emotional, or economic injury or property damage to, or conveys a gift, offer of promise of anything of value to, or misleads, intimidates, or harasses another person who is a witness or potential witness, person who is somehow involved, aware of information, records, documents, objects, or basically a member of law enforcement or an officer of the court. So the part
come on now, leaving rubber ducks. I mean, none of those things that you talked about, threatening. I mean, you just waved rubber ducks at me. You threatened me. I mean, come on.
Absolutely.
Let's be serious.
The word they use though is the inflicting emotional injury. That's their gotcha.
Spare me.
In that
inflicting emotional injury by a rubber duck being left outside of a pizza parlor.
Right.
It's owned by Chris Albert. I mean, you know what I equated it to? You know what I equated it to was, I don't know, do they do that down in Florida where kids like have these little peace rocks? They'll take little rocks and they'll paint them up and they'll put peace or love or, some of the nice little innocuous messages. They'll paint flowers on the rock and they leave them around. That's what I equated it to. I mean, I like to walk the rail trail or ride my bike on the rail trail, and they leave those all over the rail trail. Am I emotionally inflicted by seeing these little rocks around? I mean, and I don't see the difference. A rubber duck is kind of like, it's benign. What, so I fail to see that it's inflicting emotional distress. I really don't. And what about some of the pro Karen Reed people having bleach thrown in their yards? Is that not emotional distress?
That
nothing happened to those people. Nothing
Right. Yeah,
happened to
that's
those people.
property damage. They
Yes.
have pets and children who spend time in those yards, many of them.
Yeah.
But nothing has been done with those. And
That's actually a dangerous chemical, and that could be physical damage, which could be
exactly.
intentional infliction of emotional distress when you have physical damage like that. If a dog ate it or a child rolled around in it and got it in their system, so yeah, the whole attitude of the Commonwealth of Massachusetts has just been wrong in this case. And I'm told the reason that they want to retry the case with a special prosecutor is one, as Vanity Fair magazine pointed out, none of the top prosecutors in the Norfolk County District Attorney would try it. But two, and I heard this from some inside sources, they're furious. The people in law enforcement are furious that they didn't get their conviction. And there's a lot of good people in law enforcement. I have friends and extended family, by the way, that are in law enforcement, and they're furious with the people that handled this case. But the Commonwealth is furious that they didn't get their conviction. So, I mean, they're mad as a wet hen. They're mad. I don't know. I can't think of a better analogy. They're mad as a wet cat. I was doing some dishes this morning and accidentally dropped some water on my cat. Oh my God, she was furious. That's the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. They're furious that they didn't get their conviction. So they will put pedal to the metal and do everything they can to get Karen Reed. They're ratcheting it up. They're ratcheting it up. Anybody
I
in the
yeah,
in the beginning when they first brought the new special prosecutor on, people said, "Well, maybe he'll look at the facts and drop the case." Nuh-uh. No, that's not happening.
absolutely
They're
not.
they're
Yeah.
doubling it down. Yeah,
And I knew immediately that there was absolutely no way that Morrissey brought on an outside counsel without first having a very specific conversation about the way that he wanted that case handled, um, why, and probably to not drop it no matter what. Um, and when I hear you say that the Commonwealth is angry, what I see here, and this is an extremely outside perspective, not a lawyer and not a resident of Massachusetts, but it looks to me, and this is something that you see in Florida just as much as anywhere else, um, but it looked to me like they were hoping to get Karen to plea out. They
absolutely.
were
You're absolutely right. Yeah,
they were
you're
not
absolutely right.
planning on having a trial. They were
No,
not planning on having to present real evidence. They were hoping that she would roll over, plea out of this, and that they wouldn't have to present a case. And then when she fought back, they were forced to show a decent case, and they couldn't do it.
no, you're absolutely right. I agree 100%. I mean, the case, if you'll recall, procedurally started out in the district court as a hyped up drunk driving homicide case.
Mhm.
But then that wasn't enough for and they figured, yeah, most of those cases do get pled out. But then the Commonwealth decided to amp things up and indict her on the second degree M. And so then that's when she sat down and she said, I'm gonna get another attorney. Yannetti is great. David Yannetti is a fantastic criminal defense attorney, but she sat down pulling her hair out. And one night she read all about Alan Jackson. She says, I'm bringing him in. So it could have gone quite differently if the Commonwealth itself hadn't ratcheted it up to the superior court level with an indictment. And you're absolutely right. That's when she pushed back. And in the Massachusetts courts, I'm sure it's the same in Florida. In the Massachusetts courts, especially on a Monday morning, you go into the arraignments and the prosecutors come in with an armload of files.
Oh,
And so, yeah, the goal is to plea them all out or plea as many of them out as possible. Then if you get a trial, you push it out so you have time to really prepare because
okay.
they just want to plea them out. And so, yes, I think you're absolutely right about that I think the Commonwealth wanted her to plea out, but anybody that still thinks she's going to plea it out, it ain't happening, you know?
Jim asks, still no response from Morrissey's office. Why other ADAs won't prosecute Karen? Absolutely. So
Does Jim,
there's nobody in the district attorney's office of Norfolk County who can and will prosecute Karen Reed. I mean, that's from the Vanity Fair article.
Exactly. The Vanity Fair article said that they brought in Mr. Brennan because none of the top prosecutors in the Norfolk County District Attorney's Office they refused to try the case. So I'm like, no, that can't be true. I mean, they're paid by taxpayers, and they have. What would happen to most normal people that are watching your channel if they told their boss, "I refuse to do my job"? They're out the door. But these are people paid by the taxpayers, and nobody in Massachusetts cares about that. So I couldn't believe that when I read it, and so
Yeah.
I called Mr. Morrissey's office. He just hired, I don't know if you know this, but he had just hired at the beginning of October a new press guy who used to work at one of the newspapers. So he had just hired a new press guy. So I called District Attorney Morrissey's office. I was shuttled off to the press person who I didn't write down his name, but we had a little conversation. I said, I want to be as amicable as possible. I want to be as professional as possible, but is that true? And he just started reading a press release about something unrelated. And I said, well, wait a minute. No, I've heard that. He said, well, no, we put out a press release in September. I said, well, this
With
is
a
a new article.
non-answer.
It was some other press release on site. I don't even remember. It had nothing to do with this. He said, well, I can only refer you to the press release. So I said, well, could you call me back and get an answer for me? And I said, I'm an attorney. I practice in the courts in Massachusetts. Here's my contact information. So I followed that up with a letter that I faxed to their fax number that's on District Attorney Michael Morrissey's webpage. So I faxed it in. The fax went through. Just simply saying, that can't be true? Is that true that all the top prosecutors refused to retry the case? Could you let me know? Get back to me. I invite you to be on my channel. And of course, I realized that the district attorney himself is not going to be on my channel. But, I gave him that opportunity. I said, you are your designee. And he had just hired a new press guy. They just hired. And I said, if barring that, if you don't want to come on my episode, could you just give us an answer? And if you go on the Norfolk County District Attorney's website, they have a ton of press releases about how to keep kids safe in the summer and how to drive carefully. And if you see something, say something, all of which is very good. All of which is very good. But they've never to this day responded. And I sent that out. I can't remember whether it was October 30th or 31st. So, I knew that it was them when my phone didn't ring. So, it has to be true. It has to be true. But how outrageous is that? How many people in your audience right now could tell their boss they refuse to do something and keep their job?
No kidding.
No
kidding. Yeah, insubordination. You're out instantly. Speaking of Morrissey, I want to get your opinion as to whether this is normal. I've asked a couple other Massachusetts residents, but I'd like to know yours.
I'm not a Massachusetts resident. So I want to tell you a little secret. Just come close. Don't tell anybody. I actually live in New Hampshire, right over the border, you could throw a rock, but I had an office in North Andover for 27 years. And when they sold the building, I moved to Methuen, Massachusetts. So I have an office in Massachusetts, but I don't live there.
Got it. So it's kind of like Jersey and New York a little bit. How there are a lot of people who live in Jersey, work in New York. Okay.
Exactly. Yeah.
So I looked back into his election history because he's been in some form of public office since 1976. So he started off as a state representative, right, in the 70s.
Yes.
He since then went into the state Senate. Mm-hmm. And then in 2010 became the district attorney for Norfolk County. But in all that time, 48 years, there have only been 4 elections, either primary or general, in which he has had an opponent.
I can explain that. The People's Republic of Massachusetts is a one-party state. It's a one-party state. It's a Democratic state.
Primary. I mean, no primary opponents either.
They wouldn't dare. That's not unusual for Massachusetts. By the way, I was born and raised in Pennsylvania, which is a purple state. I mean, one time you have a Democratic governor, the next time you have a Republican governor. Then I move up to Boston to go to college, those many years ago, and I'm like, what? There's not even primaries for half of these races because it's a democratically controlled state. Now, it's true that there've been a bunch of Republican governors, but other than that, it's really so it doesn't surprise me that you did some great research. That's a good point. He never had any opposition. So the real question is He's up for re-election in 2 years in 2026. So the real
Yes.
question is, will this have any impact on that?
Hopefully
I doubt
so.
it.
So Juna Perkins is going to be running against him in this upcoming election, and she, if you'd like to see any of what she has to say in how Morrissey handled the Karen Reed case, I'd be happy to send you the episode. But Mike Crawford, the Young Jerks, he
Mhm.
had her on
Mhm.
his YouTube show
Yeah.
maybe a month or two ago, and
Yeah. I'm
they
aware of
had a
that.
great discussion. Very,
Yeah.
very interesting stuff. I loved getting her perspective on how not just Karen Reed, but also several other cases, Sandra Birchmore and others
Yeah.
were handled. So
You
yeah,
know, I wouldn't put any, she's a very nice person and she's very qualified and I wish her the best and I hope she, wins. But Massachusetts has a long history of voters just kind of, there's a long history of corruption in Massachusetts. Voters just kind of go, meh, so what? I mean, when I first
mhm,
started following Massachusetts politics, two state senators were in jail. DiCarlo and McKenzie had gone to jail, and a third one, Kelly, was trying to get out of it as much as he could. They were in jail because they were taking kickbacks on construction contracts to build a campus of UMass in in Dorchester. And so there's been just one scandal after another, after another, after another, and it really has no impact on anything. It's
no,
just it just rolls right along.
that's
So I would wish her the best, but my observations of Massachusetts are such that it just roll. And now what? I mean, before the Karen Reed case, the big scandal was a lot of state police officers were phoning up their time records and getting
yep,
thousands and
overtime,
thousands and thousands of dollars of overtime. So
tons of it.
nothing happens, nothing changes. It just rolls right on. It just keeps rolling right on. So
Next thing is
I
a
would
news
wish her the
cycle,
best,
right?
but we'll see. Yeah,
Yeah,
you know.
I hope so. I mean, the very fact that she's not Michael Morrissey is hopefully enough to for most voters to go ahead and make a change because he's been running unopposed since he got there.
Yeah, yeah, I know,
So,
I know, and it's just Massachusetts voters tend to go with voter recognition. If they
mhm,
know somebody, they'll go with that. And
sure.
he also has a very big network down in Braintree and Quincy and elsewhere in Norfolk County. So I don't know. We'll see.
We'll
We'll
see.
see.
So, let's see. Let's see if there's any more questions in the chat. What is your take on Robert Alessi from Jim? Is it true that DLA Piper would have vetted this case fully and not let Alessi join Karen Reed's team unless she is innocent?
Well, that's an interesting question. I mean, of course, he's been practicing law long enough that he can kind of do what he wants. You know what I mean? I mean, one of the things that I was excited about when I was freed from the Boston firm environment and went out on my own, I could pick and choose the cases that I want to represent. Now he has I'm still not done vetting him out. I know that he has a background in civil rights, and that's something that's really going to be required in this case. But I would think that his firm would have taken a look. And why wouldn't they let him join unless
Yeah.
they felt strongly that she is not guilty? Why
Well,
wouldn't they let him?
DLA Piper is an international
Right,
swanky white shoe law
right.
firm. So, I mean, it's no question that they take their reputation very,
Yeah,
very seriously, and they wouldn't want one of their people representing them getting their feet wet in a quack case. So,
right.
par- the
There
pun,
you go with the
pun
ducks
not
again.
intended. Yep, a quack case.
Yeah, yeah.
So, um, well, are there any parts that you are wanting to rewatch together, and any parts of the Daubert hearing that
Oh, it
you're
went on
wanting
all
to?
day. I couldn't believe it went on for so long. I mean, it's necessary because they know that Brennan wants to take a shot at her. So
Mhm.
unless he was really thorough, he was with her for like what, 5 hours. Uh,
Sure.
the, the the thing that I really noted was that Hank Brennan is really nailing her down on. Well, she's not an orthopedic doctor. She's not the. dog bites are topical. They're on your
Mhm.
skin. Now, but he really tried to
Right.
nail her that she wasn't an orthopedic physician. Well, who needs an orthopedic physician unless they have a joint or a bone problem? And the funniest thing I thought was, if there's anything funny in this case, was he tried to impeach her by telling her about a book, a dog bite book. Well, did you ever read blah 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 blah? She had written articles. She wrote
Mhm.
peer-reviewed articles
Yes.
on dog bites. She worked in the emergency room. I mean,
Who
you know
better?
what? Just between you and me, they look like dog bites, don't they? Or they look like claw
Absolutely.
marks or dog bites.
And
So why does she have to be any other specialty? But like, he tried to impeach her by saying, "You didn't read a book on dog bites, did you?" And she said, "Could I see the book?" And so he wasn't prepared. I mean, when you go to court, all of your evidence needs to have been shown to the other side. You don't
yes.
present something unless the other side. So you see him kind of retreating to the back of the courtroom, and Hank Brennan, and showing the book to attorney Robert Alisi. He shows it to him. Then he comes back. She had said, "I want to see that book." So he shows the book to her. What does she do? She actually looks into it. She goes into like the title page. She says, "I don't see that any of these authors have
A
degrees."
degree.
In the courtroom,
Who are these people?
broke into laughter, or there was some kind of an outburst, and the judge and the court officer, "Okay, no outburst, no outburst." But
Of
then the thing that
course.
was the most noteworthy about it was the judge. Hank Brennan didn't say motion to strike. The judge said, "Do you want a motion to strike?" And he said, "Yes." "Okay." She's
Mr.
helping
Lally,
him.
would you like to object to that? Oh my
This
goodness.
time
The
it
way
was,
the way
yeah,
she
exactly.
held her
It
hand.
it's the same thing as her helping Lally along in the first trial. She asked Hank Brennan, "Would you like a motion to strike?" Come on.
Unbelievable. You could probably have a kindergartner or, you know,
Yeah,
a teenager in that courtroom on the prosecution side, and the way that Bev has been guiding them and cueing them, and, would you like to object to that? Not requiring them to give a legal basis
I
for
know.
their objections. And is that even true when she said right out, in Massachusetts, we typically don't give a reason for our objection?
Well, it depends on the judge, really. The theory is this: you don't want to explain why you're objecting because that is suggestive to the jury. Whether your objection is sustained or not allowed, they don't want you to suggest to the jury that it's improper. It kind of breaks the rhythm of a trial. So it depends really on the judge. And yeah, I have had that, but usually what the judges say is one word: objection hearsay, or objection business record,
Right.
objection,
Leading or
one, yeah,
argumentative, yeah.
exactly. Hey, your objection's better than me.
Oh, stop it. I'm just I'm just a nerd. I have the memory of
No,
an elephant, but, it would appear to me that anytime I was hearing the word objection, it
yeah,
it seemed like there really wasn't a reason for it other than they didn't like it.
right,
I'd like to hear a reason that there's
right.
something wrong with that line of questioning. Otherwise, all you're doing is saying, "Mommy,
Yeah, and
mommy."
we've been told to keep objections to a minimum. You have to object. If something's improper, it's improper. It's your job to keep it out. But we've been told to keep it, to a minimum, because we've already done depositions. And if questions are objectionable, we're not supposed to do objections in depositions, but we know that there's an issue, and
Sure.
in advance. And so, yeah, it's kind of a strange situation, but it varies by judge, really.
And
I didn't know if you wanted. Go
oh,
ahead.
sorry. And how often do you even see that many objections in a Daubert hearing? I mean, the jury's not present. It just
Right.
seems like overkill to
Yeah.
be objecting to questioning when it's just a pretrial hearing.
I can't believe they even. I can't believe that they even had a Daubert hearing where she's already been qualified. One of the odd things was that days before the hearing was on the 12th. On the 10th, Karen Reed's defense attorney Alisi presented a motion to not even have the hearing because, this has already been adjudicated.
Mhm.
And he filed it. The timestamp shows at 11 o'clock in the morning, same day, without anything from the other side. She denied it. And
But
that's
how long did it
unusual.
take her to decide to move the trial to April? I
I don't
mean,
know. It
I
took her.
I
You're right. That's a good point. That's a
it
good
took
point. Yeah, that
a
took her
very long time when
6
both
weeks about.
sides were in
Yeah.
support of it, and it took her that long to move the
Well, I'm
trial
not
to
gonna
April.
I'm not gonna make any allegations, but do you think it's possible that maybe perhaps somebody in the Commonwealth said, if we were going to spend time knocking out all these experts, we need more time? Is that a possibility?
Oh, I've been shocked so many times in this case, in this trial, that I think I'm almost desensitized to those possibilities. So there's
Yeah.
not much that you could suggest to me that I would say, "Oh no, there's no way they wouldn't do
Yeah.
that." Certainly, there's really not much that would make me have that reaction anymore. So, oh yes, Denise, it's my courtroom. That's why she's referring Attorney Myers to when Robert Alessi got up and said, "Hey, the denial that you gave in record time came with no legal basis for
Right.
denial. Not that you're required to give one, but we were wondering if you could do us the courtesy of giving us one so we can understand."
Yeah.
And her response was essentially, "I said so,
Yeah.
and that's your
And we've
reason."
heard and we've heard that before in the trial itself. I remember when they were going back and forth about the jury instructions, and that jury instruction made no sense because I've done jury instructions I don't know how many times, and she just told Alan Jackson, "That's how we do it in Massachusetts." Well, guess what? No, it's not. No, that's not how we do it in Massachusetts. Those jury instructions, I think those jury instructions are grounds for had there been a conviction for an appeal, easily, easily,
Agreed.
easily. And I'm waiting for the other shoe to drop with the Mass Supreme Judicial Court as to what they're going to say with respect to the other jurors. I have an idea, but I don't know. That'll be interesting. It's just
Well, could you share how do you believe the SJC will rule on that appeal to essentially the end game for the defense guys is to have count 1, which is second-degree murder, and count 3, fleeing the
right,
scene of a
right.
fatal accident, um, basically removed, or at least just to bring the jurors back from the first trial, to say whether or not they did indeed agree to acquit for those 2 charges, and they were only hung on manslaughter.
I don't take odds or guess what an appeals court is going to do because I've been in that court, by the way. I've been in the appeals court, and you can't, they kind of hammered her attorneys in the beginning, but you can't go by that because you've heard of a poker face, and they don't show their hand. They really don't. So it's really dangerous to kind of predict what they're going to do. All I can say is that based on those affidavits, there's 5 affidavits. Well, that
Mhm.
leaves out 7 of them. So,
True.
that's kind of, that leaves out the other one. So at most, my guess might be that, and I don't think the Commonwealth of Massachusetts likes to do this, but they'll do what had happened in the Alex Murdaugh case and ask for the jurors to come back
Mhm.
and take a poll, because as Laney Law has suggested several times, in the Alex Murdaugh case, when they brought the jurors back, they actually brought them into the courtroom. So wherever they lived, if they lived 20 miles away, they had to, get themselves back in the courtroom for like
Right.
one question. That's it. 2 questions. That's it. So Laney Law says, why not do it electronically? I mean, ever since
Okay.
COVID, a lot of stuff is now on Zoom or court call. So why not? How hard would it really be? So at most, my guess, and it's only a guess, and if I'm wrong, throw the ducks at me. At most, what they'll do is they'll say, bring the jurors back and question them. Yeah,
There you go.
you're emotionally distressing me. You're threatening me.
Hey, you could, by that rationale, you know, you could say,
Yeah.
"Hey, I've been emotionally injured
I
by
have.
anybody who hurts your feelings. I mean, just unbelievable. But anyway,
Yeah,
I
exactly.
digress. Um, so Jim says he thinks the SJC is stalling because
Because
whichever way they
whichever,
decide, there will quickly be bombs dropped by the jurors. That's an interesting
yeah,
suggestion, Jim. That maybe after they make a ruling, perhaps another juror will come forward, or one of the same jurors will um, go public or something. But um, yeah, I'm gonna kind of stick with what Attorney Myers is wanting here, which is to not speculate too much on what they'll
yeah.
do, especially since he's still practicing in
I think
Massachusetts.
I think the judge should have brought him back when there was a major
Mhm.
issue when those affidavits first. I've never seen anything like that, but when those affidavits, the trial ended on July 1st, and when
Mhm.
those affidavits first started coming out right away, I was shaking my head.
Yeah.
What the heck is this? And I would
Yeah.
have called them all back if I were a judge, but I'm not a judge, so
I would have done the same.
yeah,
If for no other reason than just to, as they say, CYA.
right,
He arguably, and this is one of the things that Marty Weinberg argued in the appellate court, which is that Bev arguably had no was not within her right, supposedly, to even declare that mistrial because she had not exhausted
right,
every other option.
yeah,
So to bring the jurors back would at least in some way show that she cared about the defendant receiving the fairest possible trial. And then
and
it
yeah. No,
go
you're
ahead.
right. The only thing I was going to add is that she read note number 3 from the jury, and she immediately declared the mistrial. She didn't give Yannetti and Jackson and Elizabeth Little. She didn't give them an opportunity to say anything. She gave them no opportunity at all. The camera swung right over there, and they're talking about scheduling the retrial,
Yep, it
and
was like
it's
all
just
in the same breath.
yeah. I'll never forget how
Unbelievable.
quickly that happened. And it just, in a trial of that length, and I think it does matter that the trial was 2.5 months. There were 74 witnesses. I think just as a matter of judicial economy, and that's right at the beginning of the rules, that's one of the factors that goes into the promulgation of the rules is that in the interest of judicial economy and justice, these rules are hereby blah, 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 blah. So where judicial economy is one of the prime factors behind the rules, it just makes no sense to just have another lengthy, time-consuming trial. I mean, how
Yeah,
not only is it expensive and time-consuming, but witnesses. I hope it doesn't happen, but witnesses pass away,
they do.
witnesses move, people's memories fade. I mean, the trial was 2.5 months, and I have to say that at the end of 2.5 months, I couldn't remember everything from the beginning of the trial.
Yeah.
So, I
I
mean,
mean, look at the
it's
differences between Jen McCabe's testimony before the grand jury and her testimony in
yeah,
the first trial. I
yeah.
mean, we can only wonder what the heck she's gonna say in the second trial by
She's
by
something
that
else.
time.
Yeah, she was something else, wasn't she?
Oh my word. There there are not a lot of people that I struggle to look at without my skin crawling, but she is one of them. I mean,
I think Brian
it
Higgins goes into that category too. I mean, he gets a non-spoliation order, and the next day he takes his phone over to the military base and cuts up the SIM card and throws the SIM card and the phone in the military base dumpster. I mean, give me a break.
he and Brian Albert did that. And then Alan Jackson brought up in one of the pretrial hearings that when the feds turned over all that evidence that mostly was, I mean, it was Brady
Yeah,
material. Um,
yeah,
when they turned that over, they also found out that Morrissey's office gave Brian Alberts and Brian Higgins the go ahead to dispose of their devices. I mean, unbelievable. How have you ever
unbelievable.
seen something like that before?
No, and I was just telling someone the other day. I still have my last iPhone on my desk. I mean, in my dresser.
Me
I
too.
mean, and what the I'm not a conspiracy theorist, but I think they intentionally slowed it down, so I had to get a new phone a couple of years ago.
No, you're
And
not wrong. They do that.
I know they do. I know they do. So I got my new phone, right here. Here's my new phone. But I still have the old one. I don't know
Mhm.
why. I thought in the back of my mind, I might need something on there someday. No, everything gets transferred over to your new phone. But
Right.
I don't know. They're so tiny. I mean, how much room did the old one? But yeah, to actually, if I was involved in something and I took my phone and SIM card and disposed of them, I think that law enforcement would have some questions for me. But not Brian Higgins. Nope.
Mhm.
So
None
anyhow,
whatsoever. And
yeah,
on a military base in 2 different locations to,
yeah,
that shows intent
I think
to
so.
hide something. I mean, why else would you go that far out of your way? If you're gonna dispose of your phone, trade it in at the cell company or
Yeah,
just toss it in the trash. I mean, to go that far out of your way to remove your SIM card, drive onto a military base, and then
yeah,
dispose of your phone in a completely
yeah.
different location. I mean,
I
that
do you
whew,
want to? Yeah, it's the weekend. We can lighten up a little. Do you want to laugh? Do you want something to laugh at?
yes, always.
I still have my old pager.
Do you?
I still have my. I had for years. I had a pager, and when I almost had tears in my eyes when I discontinued my paging service. But I still have my pager. I mean, these
Wow.
electronic things. Yeah, these electronic things are so little that it's just in the bottom of a filing cabinet. So yeah, I don't know. So I don't know about the whole thing. I think the whole thing is really suspicious. The way Higgins did that, and Proctor spoke the way he did, and Buchanan. I think they were trying to get everything in through Buchanan. I don't know if you remember the trial itself, but they were trying to get as much evidence in through Buchanan. And they were really pushing him and pushing him and pushing him. And because I thought they were going to try to not bring Proctor on, but then they did end up bringing Proctor on. So the big question is you're asking me all these questions. I'm going to ask you a question. Do you think
Okay.
they'll put Proctor on the stand in trial 2.0?
I mean, how can you not when he's your lead investigator?
Well, you
Most of the evidence was supposedly gathered by Proctor or held by Proctor. His name lands in that chain of custody somewhere. And even if the prosecution doesn't call him, I don't see the defense not calling him.
Well, exactly. I agree 100%. But then what about how is the new special prosecutor going to handle the inverted backwards Sallyport video? How is he going to deal with that?
See,
You
and
know?
this is why I think I find it so odd that he would take $75,000 or less to take this
Yeah,
case on because that alone
I don't
should be
know.
worth 75K to him. Trying
Yeah,
trying to do this with a big boo-boo in the case like Proctor.
I don't know. He doesn't need it. I know
Yeah,
rents are high in Boston.
they are.
You got to pay the rent. And I mean, you said it yourself before. I mean, rents are really high, especially in downtown Boston. Most of the
Mhm.
Boston firms have moved out to the burbs. They're at
Right.
495, 128, or up in New Hampshire. And the attorneys, I know that the attorneys don't even like going into the office. They used to send me deposition notices. And I got sick of driving into Boston because it's a pain in the neck. And it costs $50 to park the car. So I'd get deposition notices and call the attorneys. Hey, do you mind coming up to North Andover? Sure, absolutely. Because they don't want to
Right.
go into it's so I don't know. It's just it's
I mean,
I
what
don't
do
know.
you think? How would if you were given this case, prosecute Karen Reed or lose your license, be disbarred. How would you handle
Do
something
you
like
really
that?
think that do you really think there was some subterfuge like that or a threat? I mean, I don't know.
Nah.
I couldn't first of all, I've never been a prosecutor, so they wouldn't ask me. I've never ever been a prosecutor. I've known
Uh-huh.
prosecutors and I respect prosecutors. I think they perform a social function that we all need, but I've never
Mhm.
done it, so that wouldn't happen. But if they offer me, I couldn't. No, I'd be like one of those desk sitting, latte drinking ADAs down in Norfolk County and refuse to do it.
Sure.
I
Yeah,
would.
absolutely. Yeah, I probably would too. I couldn't in good conscience take on this case as a
No, yeah,
prosecutor.
and at
I
this
don't
point,
know how I would sleep at night.
no, I couldn't. I mean, there's too many holes in the case. It's too dirty, and I don't really need the 75K. It'd be nice for my retirement account, but I don't really need it that badly. I'm not
Yeah.
gonna. I was going to use a bad word that begins with a W and ends with an HORE myself out to do it,
Well.
but
Well, well.
we have to. We
Speaking
have to. We have to. be careful when we're on YouTube because they can demonetize us if we use certain
Right.
words. Yeah.
Well, I don't know. We'll see. I'm just gonna go along with what I want to say, and we'll see what happens. So Denise asked Attorney Myers, "Do you think the feds are in the courtroom?"
That's a good question. That the conspiracy theorists say they are, but why would they have to go into the courtroom? I watched it all from my office or house.
Certainly.
Why would they have to be there? I mean,
Sure.
I don't know.
I mean, I know
Don't
they're watching.
There's a
We
bunch
all
of
know.
that's a teeny tiny little courtroom there in Norfolk County. I actually tried a case in there one time, and I've been there for motions.
That
So
very courtroom,
yeah, it's a tiny courtroom, really
like a
tiny.
shoe closet. Yeah.
I tried a motor vehicle case in that courtroom one time, and I couldn't believe how tiny it was. I couldn't believe that they were going to hold a trial like this in that courtroom, but it was at the defense's request because the way it's set up, indeed, some of the jurors will be sitting behind the witness, and that's not a good situation because I know
Right.
that courtroom. But what was I going to say? I was going to say that how did I get onto that tack? There are, I think, 6 spaces for reporters, and Turtle Boy was there for some of the witnesses and not others because she wouldn't let him in for the witnesses that are involved in his case. But what I was going to say is, I would have thought with the reporters that are there, one of them would have known that it was FBI. I think that the
Yeah.
reporters would have figured it out, and we would have heard about it. So I'm guessing that the FBI was like me and just watched it on YouTube.
Watched it from home.
Yeah, exactly.
I was surprised to see them choose. I mean, I understand that the defense obviously requested a smaller courtroom, but with as many people, at least during the pretrial hearings, as there were in those larger courtrooms, I don't recall seeing a whole lot of law enforcement there. And this is kind of circling back to what you mentioned about um, typically when there's an officer down, everybody comes
Right.
to assist for the event for the incident, and then they also are present for trial proceedings.
Right.
You, do you typically see that in Massachusetts? A lot of viewers who are in uniform or
Yeah.
out of uniform.
Sure, in a big case like this, absolutely. I mean, how many state police officers were involved in the investigation? So sure. But again, I think that, technology is such that we can stay in our offices. I'm sure they had a viewing room somewhere. I should know that, but I don't. I'm sure they had a viewing room somewhere. I'm sure the state police had a viewing room where they could all watch it. So I shouldn't be speculating, but yeah, I'm
Okay.
sure that they were. It's a tiny courtroom.
Yeah.
It was barely big enough for, I think, 6 or 8 media, and that's it. And then the families, of course, were there. John O'Keefe's family and
Yeah.
Karen Reed's family. So there really was very, very, very little room. I had actually thought of going down there because it's not that far from where I live. I can be down there in 40 minutes, 40, 45 minutes, depending on traffic. But I
Mhm.
figured, why drive down there, only be told I couldn't go in and I have to go into the viewing room and watch it on TV? Well, I'll stay in my office and watch it on TV.
Sure.
I don't know.
And that was a really good point that you brought up about there possibly being a viewing room. I hadn't thought of that potentially there was more law enforcement present in the courthouse, but they could have perhaps been in a viewing room or something like that.
Or they could have
Um,
stayed over in their office, wherever their office is, and watched it on TV. I
True.
mean, the whole trial was televised. One of the Boston TV stations even televised most of it. I think it was
Yeah.
NBC 10. I think it was NBC 10 Boston televised most of it.
Absolutely.
So why go?
Well,
Yeah,
sure. Jim asks, how is it possible that Bev doesn't believe there's a perception of bias at this point? Yeah, on her behalf, Jim, and other people in this case, isn't that the standard to which she is ethically required to recuse?
Yeah, well, there was a hearing way back. I forget exactly when. I'm going to guess February, but there was a hearing to get her to recuse herself, and she said no, she wasn't going to recuse herself. So I'm sure that one who is on the bench does analyze and take all these factors into consideration and is of the good faith belief that their actions are in conformity with the ethical rules. That's all I can really say about that. I don't know. I don't know. I do know that people on both sides of the fence think that, she's against them. So
Yeah,
it's all subject. It's all subject to subjectivity.
that's true.
That-
I was surprised to see how much of kind of a wide berth is given to judges. Just since I've started
Yeah.
watching true
Yeah.
crime. I don't know if you watched any of the YSL
No.
case in Atlanta. So it was essentially a collection of rappers who
Right.
were being prosecuted, and some of the evidence against them. It was a RICO
Yeah.
RICO case, and some of the evidence used against them was their own rap lyrics.
Yeah.
You said in this song this and that, but anyway, during the trial, there were a total, I think, of 3 or 4 different judges, and one of the judges was, allowing himself to stay on the case despite there being ex parte hearings with prosecution and a witness, and one of the defense attorneys took it all the way to essentially the Georgia SJC, and
No.
he did eventually get removed. But just as much as I've seen in the past few months, it's really surprising how many things are just kind of left to the judge's discretion.
Yeah. Well, you want to talk about a great judge right in your backyard there, the Sarah Boone case. I don't know how closely you followed that, but Judge Cranick, what a great
Mhm.
judge.
Oh,
What a straightforward, fair, analytical judge. I mean, at every turn he would, talk to Sarah Boone. Are you in agreement with what your attorneys are doing? Thereby, getting rid of any defense she might have that ineffective assistance of counsel. And I remember at one point, I forget exactly which ruling it was, but during the middle of the trial, there was a ruling that had to be made on evidentiary issues, and they were both presenting the law. And he said, I need to go back in chambers and read this law and analyze this. And he went back in chambers, came back. I mean, he was honest about it. Brilliant guy, but that particular issue was something he wanted to research. Goes back in chambers, comes back a few minutes later with a very scholarly, intelligent decision. Just his whole manner.
Very methodical.
Yeah, just kind of like I don't want to deviate too much from your topic here, but the difference between the two judges in the Koberger case, I don't know if you followed that, but Judge John J. Judge in Moscow would sit there with a Cheshire cat grin on his face and never decide anything. Whereas the new judge, Judge Hippler, he comes right out and says what he thinks, and his rulings are fairly clear. I mean, the defense hit him with, I believe it was 12 motions to strike capital punishment, and he had 12, and he, then the state of Idaho came back and opposed them all, and in very little time, Judge Cranick came out with one order, 55 pages, and knocked them all out. But he was very well reasoned and based on the law and reason and everything else a good jurist is supposed to use. So that just the contrast between the two judges is just incredible.
Certainly.
That's as far as I'm going to go in criticizing a current member on the bench in Massachusetts. That's as far as I'll go.
Sure. Oh my goodness, is there someone here whose name is Lexus? Here we go. Lexus Spotlight Teeth. Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
Lexus says, I spoke to 2 Boston officers while visiting the hospital, and they both said Karen's innocent. Okay. So there are then some law enforcement that, aren't just kind of going with the crowd.
All right. I'm not going to rat anybody out because I want to continue to have friends and family members, but I have spoken to law enforcement officers who believe she's innocent and are very highly critical of the way what law enforcement officer who is a professional would condone the way they conducted this investigation. So yes, I've had the same experience that you have, Lexus. And I'm sure that's his or her real name, right?
Oh, sure. Yeah, absolutely. That's on the birth certificate and everything.
Yeah,
So,
sure it is.
I would say that if I were a member of law enforcement, I would be embarrassed because there are kind
Yeah,
of three cornerstones in which this entire thing got buggered up. You have the misconduct,
right.
obviously. You've got Proctor and Buchanan and all that. And then you also have the mishandling of evidence.
Yeah,
That all the evidence collected, there's some element of every piece of evidence that has plenty of reasonable doubt cast upon it. And then
yep,
thirdly, you have all these questionable things that we've touched over, but um yeah, I just if I were in law enforcement up there, I would absolutely be somewhat embarrassed, and I think they know better because if you watch any of the Brian Walsh, if you know anything about the
yeah.
Brian
Oh
Walsh case,
God, yeah, of
they
course.
they know how
Yeah.
to they know how to conduct an investigation.
If they
I
if
mean,
they if they can't screw that one up, how can they possibly screw up the Brian Walsh case? His wife disappears. They said, "Oh, they don't have a body." Well, yeah, they have him. How many searches was he doing on Google? How to dispose of a body? How to
mhm,
eliminate the smell of a body? What's the
that
best
part.
chemical to use to get rid of? I mean, if they botch one, and yeah, it's true, it's the same investigators, but how could they possibly botch that case? How could I mean, a kid could prosecute that case.
That's
I'm
true.
sorry.
So
Yeah, we
speaking
followed
of,
nothing.
I'm sure they used Celebrite to find those Google searches on Brian Walsh's phone.
Right. I'm sure.
So if indeed, let's just say that the Commonwealth is right and that the Celebrite extraction of Jennifer McCabe's cell phone is
Yeah.
wrong.
Yeah. Oh, you
What?
mean the
How?
Haas long to die in the snow? Is that what you're talking
Yes.
about? I thought,
How?
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. How long to die in the cold? So, if indeed they begin to question the reliability of Celebrite, what will happen to other cases that recently resulted in a conviction, and there are people serving time based at least partially on Celebrite extractions? I mean, will there be appeals and possibly releases and overturnings of convictions?
Well, that's a great question. Did you watch that show we talked about before on Netflix, How to Fix a Drug Case in Massachusetts? I mean, this goes back to people are talking, how can you say Massachusetts is corrupt? Well, it has been since the day I set foot in it. And
Go ahead and
there
say
was
that title again, Attorney
uh,
Myers, and I'm gonna put
how
it in the chat for everybody.
how to fix a drug case. And there was a chemist in the Massachusetts State Police chem lab, drug lab. Her name was Annie Ducan, and she was phoning up the drug tests. She actually,
Intentionally.
there's got to be a chain of custody and there's got to be a laboratory, scientifically based test of the substance in order to get a conviction. They don't just stop people on the street and throw them in jail. No, you've got to do all this stuff properly. Well, there was a woman by the name of Annie Ducan who was fixing she was phoning up the drug tests. She was literally phoning them up. And if you don't believe me, watch the Netflix series. Or you could do your research and find that it's true. And then there was another unfortunate situation where there was another chemist that was actually doing some of the drugs. They would come into the drug lab and they had a control drug container, and she
Yeah.
was actually doing the drugs out of the container. It's a
Ugh,
sad, 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 horrible story. But I mean,
get
so
out of here.
then to go back to what you were saying before, they had to reverse the convictions of a bunch of people that were doing time for drug convictions. They had to reverse the convictions.
Mhm.
So that's a good question you asked. What if they find out the Celebrate tests were no good?
Right,
It's
right.
the
I mean,
same
if
thing.
if they somehow, let's say they don't have any kind of follow through, and somehow in this court case sets a precedence of deeming Celebrite
Yeah,
extractions to be unreliable. I mean,
yeah,
it's unbelievable what could happen. Lexus says,
yeah.
"Can you imagine Walsh walks free because of the screw ups of the MSP. Exactly.
I would hope that they have enough other evidence. I mean, that's a horrible, horrible, horrible case, and it's just a sad thing to even think about that happened. And if the Commonwealth can't get a conviction in that case, they've got to just like hang it up and just let all the criminals go free. Seriously, it's just what a horrible case it is.
So Jim says that David Meyer is the one who handled that investigation into the lab scandal. If you don't know Attorney Myers, is he also the guy who? Yes. Okay. So he is the guy also handling the death of Enrique Delgado Garcia.
And they've never come clean on what happened in that case. To this day, they've never come clean on what happened in that case. So,
Yeah. Unbelievable what happened.
It is unbelievable.
Did you see that the MSP listed his COD? I'm sure you're familiar. His cause of death, his COD.
No, what did they say?
They said it was a duty-related illness.
That's really specific. I do remember seeing that in a headline. Yeah.
Yeah,
that's really specific, isn't it?
But broken teeth, skull fractures, that's not illness, that's injury.
Absolutely.
I mean, there's 1,000% a difference there.
If you want to have material for a podcast for the rest of your life and you're young, just watch Massachusetts. You'll have something every week for the rest of your life.
Yeah, you'll probably always have a job, Attorney Myers. There's no shortage.
No, there's really not. I do mostly civil, but the way people drive in Massachusetts, there'll be enough accidents for the rest of my life. It's not funny.
How would you characterize the driving in Massachusetts?
Oh, they're the worst. They're horrible. They're just people don't stop at stop signs anymore. They know that police are afraid to stop people, so people don't stop at stop signs anymore. Where I live, there's a traffic circle, and the rule is you're supposed to yield to the traffic that comes in. Well, people disagree with that. That's the rules of the road, but people disagree with that. Yeah, traffic circle, roundabout, whatever, rotary, whatever you want to call it. And they just it's just a game of who can get in quicker and cut the other guy off. Whether you're in Massachusetts has actually been smart enough to get rid of a couple of them, but there's accidents all the time. It's just the driving is worse. I used to drive into Boston every day, and I don't miss that at all. I really don't miss it. It's just the drive. I'm not saying New York's any better, but
sure,
it's awful.
Jason says, living in Connecticut, people keep asking me, Jason, to cover stories here, but there was so much corruption in Massachusetts that I haven't even been able to make my way back to local stories, right, Jason? Definitely. There's just so much. It seems like every time you open up the internet, there's some other scandal.
I've done some work down in Connecticut, but it was on a national level. So, I mean, it's got to be something going on in Connecticut. It's got to be something going on down there. I don't know. We'll have to keep our eyes open.
Yeah, no shortage. And I'll tell you what, in Florida, there's always something going on here too. We're a much bigger state than what we look like. Pardon the dogs barking if you're hearing them.
Well, my dog is 14. We actually had a birthday party for her last week on one of my episodes, and she's 14, so she's sleeping. She's in another room. She's sleeping.
I'm outnumbered by dogs. I have 3. So
I have a dog and a cat, and they're both behaving themselves at the moment. One time I was doing a podcast right here, and the cat jumped right up on my lap.
Oh goodness. Yeah, I have a cat allergy, but my 3 dogs, they always have something to say. So but anyway, yeah, there's always something going on in Florida. We're a much bigger state than what we look like. You could start at the northwest corner and drive for 12 hours and not be at the bottom yet. So
I remember driving down Route 95 from Pennsylvania all the way down. Yeah, it takes forever to drive from Georgia, the state line, all the way down to Miami, and then out to the Keys is forever.
Yeah, Highway 1. Whew. Yeah, very, very, very
it's
difficult. Pretty. It is. It's beautiful here. I love it. I'm starting to miss the I want some mountains. I want to live near some mountains at least at some point in my life, but I'll take the beach. I'm not complaining about it in any way. Um, Sees the day. My friend Nikki, she says happy birthday to your dogs.
Well, thank you. Yeah, she's sleeping.
Yeah.
I'll tell her when she wakes up.
Well, guys, if you have any more questions for Attorney Myers, go ahead and post them now in all caps because we're gonna wrap it up here in
Yep,
just a minute.
that's
Um,
fine.
but I do so much appreciate all the time that you've spent with me. I'd love to have you on again one day. Of course,
Sure.
we can work that out in the future. And if you'd ever, just an open offer, if you'd like to have me on your show, if you
Okay.
ever need some extra content, I can always assist you too. But I really appreciate all the
Sounds
time
good.
that you spent with us today in the savage patch
Yeah, thank you for the
of my
invite. I
chat.
appreciate it. I love seeing what other people do and participating. And yeah, we'll have you on. We'll have you on. And this case, the Reed case, is going to go on forever. Laney Law
It
was just
will.
complaining. Oh, they continued it until April. I said that gives us 2 more months of things to talk about because there's no
Very
end of it.
true.
And no, there's going to be fireworks in the next trial. It's not gonna be a smooth, easy kind of well produced thing. You know that it's going to blow up. So yeah, we'll have stuff to talk about at least through April, May, June, July.
At least through April.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. Nikki asks, what would it take to have a real judge dismiss this joke of a case? Whew, that's a loaded question.
Yeah, I can't answer that. I really, I mean, it's not. It's just not going to happen. It's not going to happen. I'm telling you right now.
Yeah, I'm with you.
There was a motion to dismiss before the trial, of quite lengthy motion to my memory, and it's on the court docket. You can actually download it and read it. I think it's 29 pages, or I can't even remember. It might be longer than that, but yeah. So there was a hearing on a motion to dismiss, and it wasn't allowed. So I mean, all the Commonwealth needs is just really a toehold on all of the elements of the 3 charges, and so it's not going to happen.
I agree
Sorry.
with you. I think they've pretty much made up their mind, and they proved it even further when they brought on Attorney Brennan. I mean that was just that put the
Special
candle on the
prosecutor.
cake, so to speak. Yeah, no kidding. No
Yeah.
kidding. Well, Attorney Myers, I very much appreciate
you.
you being here
Thank you.
today. We'll go ahead and wrap it up, guys. Thank you to all who came in the live chat. Thank you to all who are in the replay crew. Please, guys, like and subscribe and share this video if you have a friend who you think will like it. And be sure to subscribe to Attorney Myers as well at Law Offices of Andrew Myers. He's got a great show. There's
Thank
so
you.
much
Thank you.
great content and material that you can get by watching him. He's got a very fresh perspective. Amazing stuff. Amazing stuff. He and Laney and Red and Yoli, all of his little minions are just such a great team. You guys all work great together. So I look forward to having you on again. But for now, I'll go ahead and let you enjoy the rest of your Sunday.
Thank you.
So nice to
Take
talk
care.
to you and kind of see
Same here.
you
Be
face
well.
to face too. Well, you guys take care. Have a wonderful rest of your Sunday. Again, please like, subscribe, share, and we will see you on Tuesday. On Tuesday afternoon at 1 p.m. Eastern, we're going to be having Jen Root, the sister of Justin Root, and she'll be on with me to discuss some of the details of some of the heartbreaking details of what has happened with him. So be sure to join live 1 p.m. this Tuesday. Thank y'all.
Peace
Take care.
out.
Have a great rest of your day.